When I was a teacher in Boston, we used to have a tradition of going out for dinner, a group of us, on Friday nights to celebrate the end of the week. And one of those teachers had a girlfriend who would join us, and she was delightful, Liz. Liz was dejected one day, so I asked, "What's going on?" And she said, "Oh, I'm having tests with my doctor this week. They think I'm allergic to gluten." And I said, "Oh, no. That would be terrible." I mean, one of the things I knew from going out with her was she loved bread as much as I did. She was always getting a panini or a calzone. And so the next week, I checked in with Dan, her boyfriend, and I said, "How did Liz make out?" He said, "She tested positive." And I thought, no. So the next time I saw her, I said, "Liz, I am so sorry." And her response amazed me. She said, "I just had the best week of my life. I had no idea what life was supposed to feel like. I just thought I was always supposed to feel that way. Now, I feel so much better, I can't believe it." It turns out that gluten was something that Liz thought she loved, but actually, it was her downfall. And that's exactly what the story is about today. Zacchaeus loved money. He loved money. So when we say that he's a tax collector, we need some context for that. He collected taxes for the Romans. He was Jewish. He collected the taxes for the enemy occupier from his own people. He was a trader. He traded his heritage for money. And the reason he was rich is because whenever he would do that, whenever he would collect the taxes, he always took a generous cut for himself. So this story of Zacchaeus is dark. It's really upsetting. He was the most despicable kind of person in his community. So one day, Jesus passes by his town, and something in him said, "I want to go see that guy. I don't know why, but I want to go see that guy." And he worked so hard at it that he climbed a tree to get a good view. And that allowed Jesus to see him and say, "Zacchaeus, I'm going to go to your house. I choose you." And everybody must have been like, "Him? The traitor? He's disgusting. Why?" But immediately, Zacchaeus lets go of his love of money. Immediately. Did you hear that? Without Jesus saying a word, Jesus makes no conditions. And right away, he says, "Lord, if I've done anything, forgive me. I'll pay back half the money. I'm going to give half my money away. And if I've done anything wrong, I'm going to pay back those victims 4 times over. Mark my words, I promise." And at that moment, he felt the best relief he had ever felt in his life. It turns out that money was his gluten. He thought he loved it. He thought it made his life better. But it was his downfall. A story like that is what we call conversion. That's what conversion is. And we are all called to find our own conversion. But one of the key points to understand this is that conversion is God's work, not ours. Conversion is God's thing to do. We can't convert ourselves. It's impossible for us to convert ourselves. We depend on God to do it. And the way it works goes back to that first reading that we heard. The Book of Wisdom says, "Compared to the Lord, the universe is like a grain of sand." The universe, compared to God, is like a grain of sand. Now think about that for a second. There are billions of galaxies, and each galaxy has trillions of stars. You take the billions of the trillions, and you put it up against God, and it's a grain of sand. You might remember that a few weeks ago in a homily, I told you that fact about the solar systems. Every hour, 1 million new solar systems are born somewhere in the universe. Every hour. This whole thing is expanding. And wisdom says, all of that compared to God is like a little fleck of lint. It's like a little speck. It's nothing. So that is what the recovery community means when people who have a terrible addiction say, I have to turn to my higher power. That's the power we're talking about. That power. And that's why it works. That's why we can say, with God, all things are possible. That's not just a nice word. That's not just something that we say to sound pious. That's the truth. Because that power is so big, it's irrepressible. So when somebody has some big downfall, and the one that comes to mind, not to pick on anybody, but it's one that is in a lot of our families, somebody say is dealing with smoking, and it's killing them. They can't breathe, and their family's always telling them, Mom, we're not going to have you here much longer if you don't. And they say, but I can't quit. I've tried. I can't quit. And that's exactly right. I can't. You can't. But our higher power can. And that's why we turn to that power. That's why we plug in to that power. That's why we surrender and say, I can't do this, but God can. So our work this week is pretty clear. This week, we are called to begin this journey by naming whatever the thing is that we love, but is actually our downfall. What is your gluten? What is it? For Zacchaeus, it was money. For Liz, it was bread. What could it be for you? Might it be shopping, running up debt, buying things we don't need? Might it be food? Might it be romance or sex? Might it be video games? Might it be pleasing other people to our own detriment? Might it be gambling? Might it be dishonesty, the kind where we just are always saying whatever's easy to get people off of our trail, not for any reason, but just because we like our privacy? Whatever it is, smoking, drinking, drugs, whatever it is, there's probably something in each of our lives that we think we love, that we think we need. It's part of how we cope. It's our reward. It's our vice. But it's actually our downfall. And we are trading a lot for it. And we purposely don't look at that, because if we did, we would know that we need to change. The great news is that all we have to do is name it. Because once we name it, we, like Zacchaeus, start to climb that tree that gets the better view of Jesus. And then, actually, what happens is remarkable. We become one of God's favorites. We become one of God's very favorites. And the way that works is shown by what Jesus said at the end of this gospel today. Because when we name what we need help with, when we name the thing that we can't do, only our higher power can, Jesus says, there's the one I came for. Because he ends today by saying, the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost.